welcome back to another Outdoor Philosophy. And this will be the last one we do on UBI because I'm sick of the topic and I think it's kind of crazy. But this is the one argument that really gets me going the most, as far as the most plausible argument. You know, the whole we got to fix the welfare state, I think, is a bad argument. Sorry if I'm distracted over here. Somebody across the street here actually just lit a big bonfire in the front of this. And it's like, that's interesting. Maybe UBI for over there? I don't know. Hopefully the place doesn't burn down. Let's see what happens. Fun. But anyway, we want to talk about robotics and jobs being taken over by robots and UBI. Because this is the one, probably the one valid argument that I'm seeing for this. Now, this is one of the few UBI arguments where the funding doesn't necessarily come from the governments as much as it comes from a tax. So the proposed idea, as some people have stated, is we create a tax that when a company wants to get rid of all these people and bring on the robots instead of people to do the jobs, they get taxed at a higher rate. Now, this is an interesting debate and discussion because if you don't know anything about how businesses work and how employees work and things, so suppose somebody comes in and they're working for you, and let's just say it's a full-time job. If a full-time person comes in and they're being paid, $50,000 a year, well, the cost of that employee is not $50,000 a year because you have to pay the employment taxes, you got to pay, wage payroll, you got to pay. There's a lot of things you got to do and you got to pay. And then there's benefits and other things. So usually an employee costs about twice what their wage is. Now, when you get down to your part-time, it's not quite twice, but it's pretty close, depending on if there's any benefits or things like that. Obviously, if there's any matching to retirement plans, that actually costs. But even your basic no benefits of working here other than you come give us the best years of your life and we'll give you a few dollars and a few carrots in there. Outside of that idea, then you still have to pay the W-2 taxes. So this is where a self-employed person has to pay what's called the self-employment tax, which is a 15% tax. What the self-employment tax is the person's contribution to FICA. When you are an employee, your employer pays that tax. You don't. And so if you're self-employed, you pay that. So there's always that 15% more. And then there's some other factors. There's some training. And so what happens is, as we have this social push to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour so people can make more money on what they have, then what ends up happening is the companies start looking at this going, well, then maybe I should just invest in this machine, because when the person was getting paid minimum wage, and minimum wage is, $7.50 an hour, $7.75 an hour, whatever it is right now, they're not costing me more than this amount. We can amortize this over the course of a year and say, okay, the cost of this employee is, let's say the cost of this employee is, let's say $25,000 a year. Well, if the machine now costs $25,000 a year because the technology gets better, they say, I can pay the employee $25,000 a year, or I can buy a machine for $25,000 and pay a smaller yearly contract, and the machine is expected to last 5 to 10 years. Well, it makes a whole lot more business sense to bring in the machine at the same annual cost of the employee and to let go more of the employees. Sure, you still have a few employees. You're not going to be able to completely do away with them. You need somebody to make sure the machines are running. You might need slightly higher skilled labor to fix the machines, but one highly skilled labor can handle all the machines in my town versus the 18 dozen people that are working in those individual restaurants. So we have this debate that happens as the technology gets better, more and more people are out of work. So the proposal is that the businesses, any business who replaces employees with machines, they have to pay an extra tax. That tax gets collected and sent out to you as a UBI. That is the one argument that is an interesting one we have to look into. I don't want our society to go there, but we have to ask the questions if it is at all. Because what this is the start of this smart city revolution. So if you've seen the plans for all the smart cities, effectively we as people own nothing. We are nothing more than a cog in a system, sometimes useful, sometimes not. All right, sometimes we have an economic value, sometimes we don't. But oftentimes what happens is we all have to pay these. And so Uber and Lyft are huge in this realm of trying to get everybody to dump their cars. You don't need a car, it costs too much. They're pushing all this stuff in the market to convince us that a car costs too much money. Why would we possibly want a car? We got to get rid of the car. We can just get an Uber or a Lyft and get anywhere we need to get to, and it's so much cheaper and we don't have the hassle. Well, that's a great argument from the people who will now own all the cars. Think about that for a second. A big company wants to own all the cars and convince you that you shouldn't own a car because it costs too much. I got news for you. I got a car that I bought 10 years ago for $6,000, and it has not given me much trouble at all. The small amount of maintenance I've had to put into it means that, yeah, if you're going out and you're a stupid normal sheeple and you're full-fledged financing a car at $500 a month, yes, your car is going to cost you a lot of money. Use a little bit of brain cells, cut your car back to something you can pay cash for, do basic maintenance on it, keep the thing running, and keep it for 5 to 10 years. It will cost you a whole lot less than renting Ubers and Lyfts, I promise you. But that's just one plan. There's also plans in these smart cities that, we won't even really have our own houses. I mean, you see this new pod trend? You just rent a pod. It's basically a bit like bunk beds that you're renting with other people because it's too expensive to get a place to live. And so they don't want anybody owning this kind of stuff. The pod company wants to own everything. The ride-sharing companies wants to own everything. The scooter companies wants to own everything. And we just pay these fees and we rent and rent and rent and rent and rent everything that we have. And there is a challenge to this, because the challenge that we get is that we will get to a point, if we don't slow down on this, we'll get to the point when we will not be anything but just roaming people, roaming consumers, getting the money, and all the money is collected from this. Now, there's going to be enough income coming in. There's going to be just enough jobs to prevent a total civil war. Just enough jobs that are going to be here so that a few people who get the jobs will keep the jobs. Some of those that we have are going to be low end, low level, low skill. That's a given. But then what's going to end up happening here is we'll get to the point where most people are going to be out of work, and we're going to need a type of UBI because robots and robotics have put us out of a job. And that is the one argument for UBI that makes a little bit of sense. But I would argue it's better we don't do UBI and we do more things to counteract this movement. Now, does going off to school and getting more skilled labor help? Not necessarily. I mean, right now, doctors and lawyers are being replaced by robotics and technologies. It's a fascinating thing to see. It really, truly, genuinely is a fascinating thing to see all of the areas where people are being replaced. And the fact of the matter is, we have to get to a point in our society when we recognize the value of human workers over machines. Because I promise, our society will function with the machines, it just won't function well. And that in and of itself will cause more issues and more problems and more challenges. So I don't know if I have any final solution here. It's just some things to think about. It's some things to talk to your congressmen and your other political leaders about, to say, hey, what is the plan for this? Do we want to get to a world where nobody owns anything except a few big companies? We're getting to that point right now. And we as people are complicit in that every single time we use these services in lieu of actually taking ownership for things in our own life. So the best way to prevent UBI in this overarching takeover of the world is to use real services that you really truly own. Own what you can own. Don't just give up. Don't give up your car because Lyft is more convenient. Don't give up your house because the pod is more convenient. Look at where these smart cities are going. It would kind of shock you. So that's kind of the final statement I want to say. What does UBI have to do with all that? Well, if we're all out of work, it does make sense that we got to collect a whole lot more money. Nobody will really have anything except your basic stipend. And then we're going to get right back to that in-time world. We all have this stipend. We can buy and trade a little bit more. If you can do a little bit less, you can make it maybe a little bit further. But the barrier of entry to actually start a new company is going to completely disappear. UBI will be our only choice. We got to stop the craziness before it gets to that point. Let me know your thoughts on all this. in the comments down below. Thanks for coming along on this outdoor philosophy, and I hope that you enjoy your daily walk in our Lord.